broadcast. To members of the public in the gallery, I would like to remind you that this planning meeting is being broadcast live over the internet, so there is no need for any other filming of the meeting to take place. This meeting is available to view online now and in the future. Committee members, please be aware that we are all on camera and you may be visible on screen when people around you are speaking. And please remember to speak clearly into the microphones. We welcome the use of the Welsh language at meetings. I have had no request for people to speak in Welsh today, so this meeting will be conducted in English only. Please can all mobile phones and other noisy devices be put on silent. If there is an emergency alarm, please follow the green signs and go to the ground floor of the Civic Centre car park. Right, that's the housekeeping dealt with. I'll introduce the officers to you. I'll introduce myself. My name's Norma Parish and I'll be the chairman for this planning meeting today. And on my furthest right is Tim James, and Tim is the interim chief legal officer. And on my near right is Rachel Beale, the Senior Business Support Officer, Democratic Services. And on my near left is Richard Lewis, Head of Development Management, and Paul Wielden next to Richard, and he is the Group Leader for Transportation and Highways Development. We have two planning officers. The one up on the podium is Helen Smith, and the one in front of me is Claire Hall. So the introductions are over and we'll go to the agenda, attendance and apologies. Rachel, any apologies please?
Yes, we have apologies from Councillors Gaynor, James and Sue Marson.
Thank you. Any other apologies of members know about?
Lenny Constance.
No one else, just Lenny Constance, is it? Thank you. And please sign the attendance register, please, as usual. I think I've seen it going around. Thank you. Declarations of interest, to go over to Tim James.
Thank you, Chair. A couple of declarations where I believe members will wish to have some advice. If I could begin with yourself, Councillor Ashley, please. Agenda items 7 and 8. These are both planning applications relating to matters where Cwmbran Community Council were consulted, one at Two Locks Nursery School site, the other at Bryn Gomer in Cross y Ceiliog. Am I right in thinking, Councillor Ashley, that you'd wish to declare personal but non-prejudicial interest in those two items?
Not for Crossy, it's not in our area.
That doesn't fall within Cwmbran Community Council area, does it?
No.
Okay,
it's just Two Locks.
Okay, so simply in relation to item 7 then, which is the Two Locks matter.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. And then Councillor Jones, Faye Jones, I think, are you in a similar position to Councillor Ashley in relation to item 7 on the agenda?
Yes, the same.
So that's a personal interest also. Thank you. Then in relation to item 9 on the agenda, planning application relating to premises at Varteg where Pontypool Community Council were consultees. Chair, I believe you declare a personal non-prejudicial interest, is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you, Chair. And then Councillor Overton, I believe you would declare a personal non-prejudicial interest in relation to that matter also, is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions from any members in relation to declarations? Yes, Councillor O'Connell.
Regards item 7, Two Locks Nursery, just like to declare that I do own a property on Two Locks Road, so I'd like to make a personal non-prejudicial.
What sort of distance is that from the property concerned?
200-300 metres.
Okay. Well, based on what you've just told me, my advice would be that you may wish to declare a personal interest. It doesn't sound to me as if it should be prejudicial, but that's a matter for you. So do you wish to declare a personal interest only?
Yes, please, rather.
Right. Thank you, Councillor O'Connell, for that one. Any others, members, or any other questions? Can I just remind members then that they should make a note of the interests they've declared in the relevant sheet that's attached to the attendance register, which is being passed round. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We'll go to item 3, minutes of the planning meeting held on the 13th of June. Do members agree it's a true record? Does somebody move it? Second it? Right, you all agree? Can I have a show of hands? Thank you. Are there any queries or questions relating to those minutes? Right, thank you. Item 4, which is a summary of planning enforcement appeal, and this one is a decision. It's just to inform members. Do you want to say anything on this, Richard? Or
No, just for information, but if members have any questions, happy to try and answer those.
right, are there any questions, queries, comments? Right. Are you all satisfied? Noted. Thank you. Can we have a show of hands? Everybody noted. Thank you. Right, item 5, report. This is an application of lawful development to retain the existing C3B use of offering supported living to a maximum of 5 residents at Logan Villa, Avondale Road, Sebastopol, Pontypool, and the application number is 16P01281 CEU. And we are to note this report, but I would like to say regarding this certificate of lawful development, some members are very uneasy that this was originally submitted as a planning application and is now a certificate of lawful development. And members can only note the report. I don't know whether any other members want to make any. Yes, Councillor.
Is there any way which we can note the concern that's on this report, please? Is that possible?
I think we can note concern. Yes, yes.
Could I suggest that we note the report but note the concern on it just in case any of this comes back, because obviously there is considerable amount of public concern on this. There is a few more of these as well.
Yes, thank you. We all agree on that? Right. And the report is noted. Have a show of hands, please. Thank you. Thank you for that. And item 6, which is 16/P/1/01295 CEU, and this application is also a certificate of lawful development to retain the existing C3B use, offering supported living to a maximum of 5 residents at 5 Pantareos, Pontnewydd, Cwmbran. And do you wish the same note to be noted on this one, Councillor Ashley? Yes, yes. Do we all agree?
I would do that if you could. It would raise concern, you know.
Okay. Okay. We all agree on that. Can we have a show of hands? Thank you. So we note concern. Thank you. Right. We're on to item 7, which is application number 17/P/0176 FUL. I suppose that means full application. The proposal is for construction of 14 residential dwellings and associated works at 2 Locks Nursery School, 2 Locks Road, 2 Locks, Cwmbran. Now, the board members have requested a site visit before we look at this application, so it's up to members whether you wish the site visit to take place. Right. Can you propose that?
Could we
then?
propose that we, as it's been requested, and I think it sounds prudent, could we have a site visit, please?
Someone second that, please. Thank you. Do we all agree on it? Right, that's agreed then. It'll be deferred for a site visit. Right, item 8. This is application number 17/P0340HH, and its proposal is alteration/extension of existing dwelling, construction of new raised patio and retention of double garage. This is on pages 63 to 76. There was a site visit on the 27th of June, and we're now going to have a presentation from the Planning Officer, Claire Hall. Thank you, Claire.
Thank you, Chair. Just to advise members of some late items of correspondence, officers have received an email from two objectors enclosing photographs that have been annotated, and I think the objectors have circulated those directly to all members of the Planning Committee, so you will have seen those. The other item is an email from the applicant, who is very concerned about the existence of those objections, and believing that they're not to scale or a correct representation of the scheme. So just to make members aware of that. In terms of the application, members who will have been on the site visit will be familiar. This is Bringoma, which is a narrow cul-de-sac. The application site is actually on the right here when looking from the end of the cul-de-sac. It's this property here, about halfway down on the left, and this is the view from the entrance to the cul-de-sac. One of the objectors lives in this property opposite, which is, as you can see, is at a lower level relative to the application site. Again, on the site visit, members viewed the property from the number 3, which is the neighbour on the upper level, if I can call it that, the cul-de-sac entrance end. So that's the view of the existing property from the neighbour, and this is the garage, the pool house that's been re-roofed. This is the view from the neighbour at the lower level. So this is the existing property, and the extension, which we'll show in a minute, is going to the rear here. And this is the view from the property opposite, which again members will have viewed on site. This is the view from the property opposite's window, looking directly onto the application site. This is the existing building. So you've got a detached pool house and the dwelling at the front of the site. This is the proposed development, which, as you'll see from the previous slide, is completely different form of development being proposed. I don't know if members can see that, it's quite small, but I just wanted to reference the sort of key changes to the previous appeal. You can't quite see it on here, but the existing ridge, the existing roofline of the property does that. So this increase here is about 3 metres from the eaves of the existing house, whereas the previous scheme went all the way to the top here, was about 6 metres, the previously refused scheme. And there's an existing dormer window there. This is be the view from the properties opposite, and this is the view at the rear, which will obviously be within the garden of the property. Again, just to show the layout, so this is number 3, which is at a higher level, this is number 7, which is at a lower level, and number 6, which is on the opposite side of the road, is here. So you've got an existing detached property with a detached pool house, and the proposal is to link them together, and also a garage at the rear, which has already been constructed, and it was visible on site to members who were at the site visit.
Okay, Claire. Thank you, Claire. At this point, I'd like to thank the objectors who wish to bring photographs in today. I'd like to thank them for sending their observations and photographs in by email. I can assure you all the members of the committee have seen them. Right, we have two speakers, two objectors. And the first objector, I think the first person who wants to object is David Jones. Would you like to come down? Thank you, Mr. Jones. If you'd like to sit down, Mr. Jones.
Is it okay if I stand? It's not a problem.
No, it's not a problem if you stand, but I thought you'd be more comfortable if you sat down. It's up to you. If you put the microphone on, and you'll have 5 minutes to speak, and Mr. James will time.
Yeah, before I start speaking, is it possible to make a very short plea beforehand? 2 minutes? Thank you for that. My name is David Jones. My wife and I live at 2 Bringoma, and I speak on behalf of ourselves and Mrs. Grimus, who lives at number 3, as she is undergoing a medical procedure at this moment in hospital. The first photograph demonstrates the brash, totally dominant design as viewed from our front garden and anyone entering Bringoma. The officer report states that the massive fronting Bringoma Lane has been removed. This is not the case as demonstrated in the first photograph. There has been little change in the huge massing, dominant fascia adjacent to number 3. This is a major omission from the planning officer's consideration. The second diagram shows the increased mass of the second floor is unchanged from previous applications. There has been some reduction in massing in the 3rd floor, and that has been redistributed lower down the lane. To achieve this, the officer report describes a sloping roof raking away to an eaves level the height of the existing dormer. This description is misleading. The eaves level would be a significant 1 metre higher than the current dormer. The diagram also demonstrates that the maximum height of the proposed dwelling is unchanged from previous submissions and is 1.2 metres higher than the existing building, or 1.8 metres closer to the lake. The third photograph demonstrates the scale, size and proportion of a garage rejected at appeal with a tall pitch roof that resembles a standalone business or residential unit. Its dimensions go way beyond those required for a domestic garage. It is incorrect to state that no objection to a garage was made in earlier applications. Reference Mrs. Grimus' letter from November 16. A key aspect of our objections throughout every application is the extensive outbuildings, concrete, cladding and fascia extending the full 40-metre length of the garden adjacent to number 3. This most point has been totally ignored. The focus on one single paragraph of the appeal has resulted in this officer report and its recommendation failing to address the devastating impact on Mrs. Grimus' home, particularly with loss of light and impact. The final slide shows the outline of the proposed dwelling, how the pool house height has been marginally increased, its structure stiffened, with its replacement cladding generating overwhelming glare. This view demonstrates how the applicant has ensured he looks over and outward to mountain trees. From the other side, number 3's view is blocked, and she looks at an increased mass of fascia and outbuildings. The officer's report declares that any new proposal should complement and enhance its location. Would any of us, if we lived at number 3, endorse a view that this proposal results in no loss of light outlook and fits, complements and enhances its location? The applicant has pressed ahead with extensive civil and construction activity with total regard for neighbours, planning procedures, the decision of this planning committee, and that of the Welsh inspectors. This unapproved work already in place demonstrates and amplifies just how damaging this proposal is to an adjoining property. The applicant now seeks retrospective planning approval for an imposing garage, an already modified pool area with its replacement glare generating cladding and a newly built patio. This supposes that possession is not 9/10 of the law, it is the law. We submit that this renewed application in its form, scale, tiered design and multiple material choices remains totally inappropriate and discordant in its location. There are aspects of the unapproved structures that should be modified or reversed. For example, a flat roof on the garage would be no bad idea.
15 seconds to go, Mr. Jones.
The officer reassures us that business use will be forbidden. If this new application goes to appeal, it is most important that the Welsh Government is made fully aware of the devastating impact on number 3, evident from almost every door and window in Mrs. Grimus's home. It is not only about what's overlooked, it's about what neighbours look at. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Jones.
I have copies of the presentation, and I also have copies of the slides I wish to show, if I was unable to do so. I have some spare copies if anyone's interested.
Thank you, Mr. Jones.
Thank you. Thank you for this.
If Mrs. Anne Phillips, another objector, would like to come down now, please. Right, the microphone is on.
It's on.
Yes, anytime.
Thank you very much.
And you
Thank
have
you.
5 minutes. Thank you, Mrs. Phillips.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Anne Phillips. My home is number 6 Bringoma, the property directly opposite the house under discussion. I'm the one who has direct view across the lane to number 5 from my bedroom window, my front door and my drive, with a view up at the house from my lounge and garden. Unfortunately, my view of his house has never been a consideration for the developer, who's been unwilling and, to my knowledge, unprepared to come and look for himself, or ask himself if he would like to have my view of the house he plans. Can I now refer directly to certain specifics of the latest plan and the accompanying statement by the developer? Yes, the upper floor facing the road has been set back from the original planned elevation by 4 metres. And yes, there's no longer a 3-storey perpendicular elevation so close to the narrow lane. Yes, he has addressed the concern of overview, but at what cost to aesthetics and to appearance? The configuration of the windows, introducing 2 rather odd oriel windows looking like closed eyelids, seems an unnecessary compromise, affecting surely his light and view and giving a not attractive view of a property turning its back on the lane. Moreover, the top of the house seen from across the lane is still 1.2 metres higher than the current apex and is 1.8 metres nearer to me. Interestingly and significantly, the current application, unlike the previous 2, does not offer a computer-generated image to give a full picture of the envisaged house. Didn't the developer want us to see what it will look like? So I compensated for this and have taken photographs and superimposed as accurately as I can the changes indicated by the 2-dimensional plans. I hope you've been able to look at these, because I'm not allowed to show them today. Now I would wish to address a major concern arising from this new plan, the sloping roof, its size and proposed materials. Raking away at the front of the house at a level 1 metre above the current dormer, the roof measures 12.3 metres along the front, with a 5-metre slope from eaves to the back wall, an area of 61.5 square metres. And the material to be used? Not tiles, which are indeed the unifying factor in Bringoma, but cladding. Is this aluminium? Nowhere is it made clear. but it would seem to echo the roofing material of the completed pool room. And if you drive around Cwmbran, you'll see this type of roofing in industrial estates, business parks and on schools. But I haven't found a single domestic residential property around the neighbourhood with roofing of this type. What seems proposed for number 5 is 61.5 square metres of metallic cladding of certainly significantly reflective material. I've been told that the roofing material is similar to that used on Tesco's in Ystrad Mynach, which was changed in response to local objections. And nowhere in the documentation or the officer's report are the issues surrounding this roof cladding fully addressed. Not its material, not its appearance. Indeed, the material used for this roof is not even included in the recommendations in the report, where conditions are laid down that samples of timber and glazing materials are to be submitted for approval, but not the cladding, perhaps an oversight. And it is the 61.5 square metre expanse of this material glaring on a sunny day, grey and drab in less bright weather, that will confront me and others across the lane, resembling a large lean-to extension set against the basalt grey render of the top storey. And the planning officer writes, the proposed materials are considered acceptable in this context. Really? I think not. I would submit that 61.5 square metres of cladding of reflective metal is decidedly inappropriate and unacceptable in this vicinity. Quotations from sections of planning documents used in the planning officer's report reinforce the message that any new development must have full regard to the local environment, promote sympathetic design, materials and layout, taking account of local context which includes elevation treatment, appearance and materials. Yet in spite of this, and in spite of listing a range of comments from objectors, she unreservedly recommends the plans for approval, the materials acceptable and the local context taken into consideration. Surely not. For months now, work has continued apace across the lane from my home. Trees felled, chopped up, trunks and logs taken away, roots and soil removed, building materials arrive, scaffolding is stored, garage built, walls pulled down, Japanese knotweed dealt with, lorries and vans come and go, and no word exchanged. Small wonder I and others are concerned. It is interesting to note that the Community Council draws attention to the fact that although the first application was turned down and the decision upheld at appeal, with no valid consent, work has carried on. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Phillips.
Can I also leave my...
Yes. Thank you. Right, if you'd like to go back to your seat in the gallery. And the next speaker is Councillor Richard Clark, the board member. Thank you, Councillor Clark. You have the usual 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Very kind of you. I just want to explain why I'm sat here today. Firstly, because the residents contacted me. They were alarmed with the works that were going on site during the determination of the last application. And secondly, there has been mention of the Community Council. I was the outgoing chair when the Community Council made the remarks that it did in respect of the application. I've also met with the applicant at his request, and he set out for me his vision of a family home. And to be fair to the gentleman, in respect of this application, he has made, as both of the presenters have said, some modifications. The original application was rejected, as members are aware, and that was due to its position within the site, the increased mass and form of the dwelling and proposed is considered to be unacceptably dominant and discordant feature in the street scene. I would suggest, members, that if this were the original application, it is quite possible that those same words could be said for this application. I respect the decision to modify it, but given the site and its location, I still think it is overbearing on the street. Whilst the current application is not as bad as the first, I believe the residents have given reference to this in their current objections and acknowledged that. But in terms of the design criteria in Planning Policy Wales that said visual appearance of proposed development and its relationship to its surroundings and context are material planning considerations, I believe that both objectors have put forward to you those reasonable planning material considerations. Rejecting this application is not stifling new design. I think everybody accepts, the residents, planning officers, even myself, the design of this property is a good design in a different place. In this setting it wasn't. Even if the applicant was starting from scratch and demolished the whole site, set it back to where the pool building is and had the pool building where the garage is, perhaps that would be more acceptable. I don't know, I've not seen plans for that. So it's not stifling design, it's just incumbent and incongruous with a 1950s design street with additions in 1970s. And people will argue the 1970s houses at the top of Bringoma don't conform, but they do blend with the existing. This is totally against what's existing, and in years to come, where the current have blended into one, this will always stand out on this particular site. The planning officer says it's subjective when they look at policy BW1. Mrs Phillips expressed about the character, the materials, etc. I still firmly believe that the materials and the character adversely affects the neighbourhood. Many of the members in this room, I'm looking around at the faces, were there on the site visit. The planning officer kindly showed the plans that you can see. You can imagine that in the location there. It is totally out of keeping, in my opinion. The planning inspector did say that some design changes, etc., it might be considered acceptable from the one that was originally refused. I don't think, I'm sorry to say on behalf of the applicant, that I think the changes thus far meet that criteria. So members, those who are on site, I would ask you to visualise that on site. Those of you who've only seen the pictures, I would ask you to visualise that, and you've seen the picture of this single-track street and how that will impact and how it will affect the amenity and the surroundings of the residents, and I would urge you to vote accordingly when it comes to your decision.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Now we have the agent for the applicant to speak. Mr. Lloyd Jones, would you like to come down? Thank you, Mr. Jones. You have 5 minutes, the same as the others, and Mr. James will time you.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. I am Lloyd Jones from LRJ Planning, and I've been instructed by the applicant, Mr. Stacey, to speak in support of the application today. As members will be aware from reading the background to this application, described in the committee report, there's an extensive planning history at the site. My client has experienced significant delays, which has had a profound impact on him and his young family. My client is living in rented accommodation, and given the short timescale of the proposed build, had intended to move into the dwelling earlier this year to provide some stability for his young family who are deeply upset by the current situation. This is why my client has commenced on elements of the proposal that do not require planning permission and have previously been considered to be acceptable. My client is looking to create a high-quality and environmentally friendly home. And members should note that no commercial activities are proposed at the dwelling, as my client has a commercial unit in Cwmbran. Despite the delays, my client and his architect would like to thank the professionalism of officers for finding a positive way forward during this application and at pre-application stage. They are grateful for the positive recommendation that has been made to you today by your officers. We are aware that photographs have been circulated to members by objectors, and we would like to stress that these are inaccurate and misrepresent the scheme. They are not to scale and are not being drawn by qualified professionals. The drawings just presented by your officer accurately illustrate the proposed scheme. As set out by your officers, the previous appeal decision at the site gives a clear steer on the way forward. The planning inspector in his deliberation found that the existing dwelling is poorly designed and somewhat dated, and failed to make a positive contribution to the character of the area. We request that members take this factor into consideration today. It is also noteworthy that the dwellings sit within a substantial plot and does not comprise overdevelopment as suggested. As we've just heard, there are a number of objections from local residents relating to the modern design of the development. It is accepted that design is subjective and the contemporary approach is not to everyone's liking. However, National Planning Policy in the form of Technical Advice Note 12, Design, sets out that innovative design should not be stifled by the planning process. We consider this an important material consideration. The inspector also accepted there is scope to create a dwelling of contemporary design that does not echo its neighbours. He had no particular objection in principle to the proposal's generic architectural style. However, the inspector was particularly concerned with a building mass adjacent to the roadway that would appear over-dominant. The design team has taken this point on board, together with the professional advice of your officers, and the scheme before you today has substantially reduced mass fronting Bringoma. The dwelling is on the same plane as the existing, and not 1.8 metres closer to the highways, as alleged by the previous speakers. Further to this, heavily glazed upper floors that the inspector was of the opinion that would give rise to a sense of being heavily overlooked have been omitted from this current scheme. We support your officers' views that scale, form and appearance would not represent an unacceptable change to the character of the area, and there would be no loss of light or outlook to neighbouring properties. In addition, there are no local planning policies that stipulate a contemporary design approach is not acceptable in this context. It is the case that national planning policy promotes innovative and creative design, a point recognised by the planning inspector. The proposed external materials will be of a high quality and fits in with the contemporary design, and the local authority obviously have control in terms of condition 3, in terms of seeing those details and approving those details. In relation to trees, it should be noted that the client followed best practice. The architect contacted the council to understand whether the trees were covered by a tree preservation order. They were advised that they did not, and that planning permission was not required. My client appointed a council-approved tree surgeon to undertake the works. Finally, concerns have also been raised in respect of drainage. And as set out in the committee report, this can be dealt with via condition. Overall, it's considered that proposal satisfies national planning policy that promotes innovative design. As members will be aware, national planning policy is an important suite of planning documents that should be afforded significant weight in the planning process. In summary, there are compelling reasons that allow members to approve this application. The proposal is of a high-quality design that has addressed the reasons for the inspector dismissing the appeal. My client respectfully requests that you support the officer recommendation and approve the application, as it complies with national planning policy in the form of Planning Policy Wales and Technical Advice Note 12. The proposal also complies with the adopted local development plan. Thank you for listening, members.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. If you'll go back to your seat, please. I'll ask Claire to answer the questions when Mr. Jones is back in his seat. Okay, Claire, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to come back to a couple of the points raised by the speakers. I won't be commenting on everything that they've said, because ultimately, as I said, set out in the report, there's elements of these schemes that is a matter of taste as much as anything. What is one man's pleasure is another man's poison. But I have to come back on a couple of points. Mr. Jones's representation was very heavily dominated from the view from number 3, which is the adjacent property. I would remind members that no one has a right to a view in terms of assessing a planning application. So the fact that that neighbour is looking onto what will be an enlarged structure to what they're looking at the moment doesn't give them a right to a view, so please bear that in mind in your deliberations. With regard to Mrs Phillips' comments, the most important point I'd raise from there is that the previous refusal certainly did not reference the materials. The previous appeal related to the mass and form, and the inspector commented that he no particular objection in principle to the proposal's general architectural style, combination of external materials or roof form. So please bear that in mind as well in your deliberations. In terms of the condition as to whether requiring details of the cladding was an oversight, it is not an oversight. The cladding of the roof is already there. I know what it looks like. I don't need to require a detailed sample of that to be approved. However, with the timber in particular, if that's not agreed properly, some forms of timber cladding do fade over time and can deteriorate visually. It's just important to get the right sample of approval to make sure that doesn't happen in this case. Similarly, Councillor Clark is obviously of the opinion that it's still a dominant and discordant feature in the street scene. Again, that's a matter of judgment. Your officers have set out why they think that has been satisfactorily overcome in terms of the redesign and the repositioning of the mass within the site away from the frontage. And again, in terms of the agent's right of reply and the issues raised there, he did say that the contemporary approach is not to everyone's liking, and that is very much a material consideration here because of the planning policies do allow for contemporary design. The appeal inspector certainly opened the door to that being a possibility on this site. But it's a question of whether members are comfortable that the applicant has overcome the previous concerns. Your officers think that they have.
Thank you, Claire. Do you want to come in, Chair? Right. Right. Would members like to ask questions now? Yes, Councillor Bevan.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. If possible, I'd like to ask Claire a question, please. She's already addressed one part of it, which was why the cladding has not been asked for a sample. But excuse my ignorance here, but as a new member on this committee, both in the report and on the informatives, under page 73, section 2, there's the issue there about the public sewers and Welsh Water, and it's suggested the applicant is advised to contact Welsh Water. Is it not possible for us to make that a condition, that they would have to contact Welsh Water to determine if there are any private sewers on the site?
We don't normally ask for conditions. I mean, a lot of the time Welsh Water know where the pipes are, and that information would present itself during the planning application process. I think what they're saying here is that there may be underground apparatus that they're not aware of, and it's a matter of course that the developer would contact them to establish if any would be affected. Now, in this particular case, the majority of the works are on the existing footprint of the building, so there are no below-ground works anyway, and the garage has already been built. I mean, if the developer had come across apparatus during the course of the construction of the garage, I'm sure that would have already been dealt with.
I want to get my head around this a bit because, like Richard Clark, I've served on the Community Council probably longer than I like to admit. One of the things that we were told in no uncertain terms was materials, ways of building, etc., had to be sympathetic to the areas. Bear in mind, this is Cwmbran, and people could go off and use all sorts of materials. And we were told over the last 20 years, I'm admitting how long I was on the Community Council, that if you wanted to put pink concrete or stuff like that, it was not acceptable. Now you're telling us with this development, and I can sort of understand why neighbours would be a little bit perturbed that somebody is going to do what effect I think the Planning Committee members put was a bit of a grand design job, which is what was the loose term that was used. I can understand why somebody might want to do something because there are novel designs, and the first bit of this was here for something that's quite different. Now, I'm not making any comment about the difference of this. I'm just saying that where things have happened elsewhere in Cwmbran, people have with the pink concrete, and the rest of it you've come down on like a ton of bricks. What's the difference between that and this, where a novel design is with an architect and somebody building a pink and yellow concrete patio? What's the difference between that and that? I don't know, because I thought we had some sort of guidance to materials and to aesthetics that was in line with what we had in an area. I'm beginning to feel that there's some difference here. That's materials, and certainly if you've got an area that's a general aesthetic, I've been on the planning committee long enough to get a feel for this. Now, it's true to say if this was somewhere like a Georgian or a Victorian place, you would be having quite strong constraints on this. Why aren't we starting to do this with more modern stuff? There's another question, because I can sort of understand why people in the 1950s or 1960s estate are starting to say, well, we bought into an area, why aren't we doing this? Because from a common sense point of view, it does look like that. I suspect the members of this planning committee are probably asking themselves the same question. I don't know, I'm not talking on behalf of them, but I wonder.
Would you like to reply, Claire?
I don't know how much I can add other than your planning policies are required to have consideration of local context. Now, in some areas of the borough where there's a very strong and perhaps a unified architectural approach, shall we say, then it may be the case that we wouldn't support such a modern and contemporary design in the middle of it. Don't know. Again, you would look at the particulars of the site and the circumstances and whether you felt that that site could accommodate that approach or not. I think, again, going back to the previous refusal, the issue there was very much about the mass, and that being very intrusive in the street scene. But there wasn't an objection per se to the use of a modern, contemporary approach to development on that site. I mean, the existing building is very much very quirky, if I can put it that way, compared to its neighbours. It's not the same as its neighbours as it stands, and for that reason, and given the various ridge heights and the levels in that area, we felt that the site could accommodate it, because you didn't have that very clear, distinct and uniform style of properties. To go on to that point as to why there might be differences in certain areas of the borough, you might have more detailed design advice, for example in conservation areas, in Blenavon, where you would develop more detailed design criteria that is unique to those particular areas. This is suburban Cwmbran. There is no specific design guide for it, and it's for members to decide whether they think it is something they can support or not. But I think the report is quite honest in that there will be an element of subjectivity here, and it's for members to think whether or not it can be accommodated, bearing in mind the inspector's comments are a very significant material consideration in the consideration of the proposals currently before you.
So your guidance is that there is no criteria other than the one that we had about the bulkiness of the building, which we tackled first time round.
I think you have to look very carefully at the reason for refusal last time and the appeal inspector's comments. The appeal decision was very much due to its position within the site, the increased mass and form to be unacceptably dominant and discordant in the street scene. The appellant, at that time, the applicant now, has sought to address that by reconfiguring the design so that the mass is redistributed elsewhere within the plot to overcome the concerns that the inspector felt about that massing within the street scene. The inspector did not find against the materials or the modern architectural form that was being proposed. So
the question is, has he done that well enough?
Your officers think he has, which is why the recommendation is for approval.
Right, there are two speakers, Jason and Alan.
Thank you. In your initial opening address, you mentioned that the photos were sent in by one of the objectors were not accurate in terms of their overlay. Could you just talk to what's not accurate and let us know where the shortfalls lie? I appreciate they're not a true engineering drawing, but if there's anything major, that would be useful to know.
well, they're hand-drawn annotations to a photograph, freely drawn, to presumably make a point that the objectors feel strongly about. Now, from your office's point of view, that's very different to having professionally drawn, accurately scaled drawings that we can clearly advise members of what the height is, what the width is, what the measurements are. Hand-drawn annotated drawings are very much illustrative and not necessarily a true representation of the facts.
In the original Welsh inspector, when he looked at it originally, there wasn't a cladding on the front elevation, would there? Because it was just a flat roof.
Correct. The design has changed. There was cladding to the roof, but it wasn't on the front elevation.
Yeah. I've just got a concern that you've got cladding on the front, it's a flat roof, but the garage has got a different material roof. Was there a reason for that? There's different materials throughout the site, is my point.
Again, that's the personal taste of the applicant in this case. He hasn't gone for your conventional brick walls and concrete roof tiles. We have to determine whether we're happy with what he's suggesting or not.
Stephen?
Looking at the residents' concerns, particularly with the drainage and the excess water runoff, perhaps from the property, since the trees have been taken out. I mean, going to the residents' objection, they're unable to cope with flash flooding with the drain aspect. So, with the altercation of taking all the trees away, would that incumbent any more rainwater running down to them drains?
Removal of trees is obviously reduces absorbency levels within a site. However, he hasn't. I wouldn't say he's taken down all the trees. He's removed some trees on the site. There's still quite substantial greenery on that plot, as members who are on the site visit will know. But because of the extensive amount of new driveway that is being proposed, as you will see from the bottom of page 72, there is a condition recommended, which is actually a Welsh Government standard condition, which was brought in a few years ago, because up until that point people could hard surface their entire curtilage without any recourse, and obviously over time people have realised that causes surface water runoff problems. So the condition is there to absorb or direct surface water in a manageable and controlled manner.
Are there any more questions or comments from members? No? Would someone like to make a proposal?
I'd move the recommendation by the officers subject to conditions within the report.
Right. It's been seconded. Right. We've had a motion to approve with a seconder. Are you ready to vote? Can we have a show of hands or show of hands? Those against? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, 9. Right. That application has been refused. Thank you, members. What? Oh, right. The officers reminded we need reasons why you are turning down this application. Was it? Oh, yeah, we had a motion to approve, but yes, but the vote went against that. Oh. We don't. Right. Yeah, we need the reasons. Yeah. Yes, if you want to. Alan, you wanted to?
I don't think there's enough being done to overcome the sort of overbearingness of the structure, to be honest. It still exists in height. I still feel it's overbearing in nature.
I don't think that will be acceptable as a refusal. Jason, do you want to come in?
Yeah, two quick points really. The height of the building, if that's accurate, says it's increased by 1.2 metres from existing, which I feel is unacceptable. But also, again, we talked about the design itself is totally not in keeping with the area in which it's being placed. The street itself is it's a lovely street, and this design, while it's a very contemporary, modern design, it would look great away from other houses. In this particular setting, I feel it's just not suitable at all.
Right, I'll have to take advice from the legal officer and the planning officer over this.
Can I just confirm that your issue is the design, just about the design in the street scene, but there was an issue about overbearing. And in terms of overbearing, were you talking about in relation to the street scene or in relation to the properties around the site? So overbearing in design terms?
Well, overbearing in terms of the height of the structure, really.
In the street scene that you're...
Yeah, I don't see how they've overcome the original objection of it overbearing on certainly the property opposite.
Can I just say that we went down and had a look there, and it still does not conform. Whatever it needs some rethinking about, and I still with that. And what Jason said as well, also I think is true. It's just right in the middle there. It's not the property that's on the other side. It's actually when you come to the street, it's a small narrow street, and it's sat there. It's still, being there. It doesn't work. And it's as simple as that, really. I'm sorry, it needs re-looking at.
Do you want to come in?
Sorry, member, if I can, you have a choice really. If the two issues are the design is not in keeping with the street scene and that it's overbearing in the street scene, we would be able to formulate wording around that if you allowed us to do that, or we can bring a report back to Planning Committee next time with the wording for you to agree, with suggested wording for you to agree. So it's up to members how they want to approach that.
Could we have a short recess, please, and discuss it with me?
Well, do you want to recess now, or as the officer said, they can bring a report back to the next meeting?
Could I move we do that?
Yes.
That would be neater.
Yeah, I think that would be...
That's very neatly put, thank you.
Okay, then do we all agree on that? Can we have a show of hands?
Yeah.
Officers bring back a report. Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I guess it's out of that one.
We go to the next item, item 9 of the agenda, which is item 17/P/0448, and it's a full application. And it's proposed change of use from agricultural land to staff car parking serving the adjacent B1 commercial vehicle workshop, sui generis coach/bus garage, and it's sited at the land adjacent to Gladstone Terrace, Vartig Road, Bartig, Pontypool. And Claire's going to present it to us now. Thank you, Claire.
Thank you, Chair. No updates to the report. I just want to run members through the proposal in a little bit more detail. This is the application site here. Again, it's part retrospective in nature. The use is already happening on site. So the photographs clearly indicate what's proposed here. So this is the view looking south from, if you're coming into Vartig from Blenavon. That's the view looking north as you drive up through Vartig towards Blenavon. sorry, that one's a bit dark, but this is a view from Gladstone Terrace back towards the main Vartig Road. This is the application site that's been submitted. So this is the existing business which is established on the other side of Vartig Road, and they require this additional land for ancillary staff parking. I've just put an aerial shot here so you can sort of see this is the existing business, this is the land opposite, and these, sorry again they're quite small, but just to illustrate what's already in the report, this is the urban boundary of the local development plan, which obviously includes the existing business land but doesn't include this land opposite, and this land here in blue is the land that's allocated for employment development in the LDP. So the existing business occupies the sort of top half here, but they have actually got an allocation of land to the south, which has been designated for employment use in the local development plan. This is the existing plan, which is just a paddock. This is the bus garage building opposite, and the proposal is to build a car park on the paddock area. And you'll see, obviously, there's been quite a lot of objection to it, particularly from the residents of Gladstone Terrace here.
Thank you, Claire. Right, any comments or questions from the... Yes, Jason.
Just to clarify, is the land to the south of the premises, is that being used at the moment for parking, or is that available land?
It's not currently being used for parking. It's actually land that's owned by the council, and it is allocated for that purpose in the local development plan, but it's not currently being used as such, no.
Ronnie.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, Claire, the usage of the agricultural land with all those cars on, there's a lot of cars there. So if this is refused, where would the cars end up parking?
I'm not sure where they were parking before, is the honest answer, Councillor, because this has only been happening fairly recently. I guess they will be displaced, certainly in the short term, but as I said, the local development plan does allocate land which, with an application for that area, might be more favourable in principle from your office's point of view than the land outside the local development urban boundary, which is what's before you at the moment.
So would there be land available if they needed it? Because to all I know in the other piece, as you said, would that be available to them to make a car park on that development site?
The applicant would obviously have to formally approach the landowner, but the fact that it's been specifically earmarked for that use in the local development plan certainly does give an indication as to what the intention is from a planning point of view.
Thank you. Stephen, then who?
Is that plot of land associated with land behind the Greenbelt land, or is it just common land, or what land has it been previously?
It's just an agricultural field. It's just a paddock that's been used, over the years. The application site we're talking about now, yeah. It's looking back through the aerial photographs. It's always been a paddock field of some description.
Yeah, it's just that we're trying to keep some green land, particularly for children's play. It's very important we keep green land for that, rather than it develop for employment use at some point.
Stephen.
It's not available for use as a children's play area, because that would be a different use to its lawful use, which is for agriculture.
Okay. Who? Then Stuart, and then Ronnie again.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. If I could ask the officer, please, it's all to do with these boundaries. In the report, it says that this is agricultural land and it's outside of the urban boundary, but there was a parcel of land to the south of the premises that would be inside the boundary. Does the applicant own that piece of land, and if so, why didn't they submit an application to go on the land that was within the recognised boundaries. I hope that makes sense.
The applicant doesn't own this land either. I mean, the applicant doesn't own the land of which this application relates, nor the land immediately to the south of the existing premises. It's a question of which land he chooses to pursue. He would require the consent of the landowner, whichever site he pursued.
Right. Okay, Stuart.
I can't believe we've got this in front of us, to be quite honest, because with another hat on, maybe I need to make a declaration on this. I'm chair of allotments, and we got very little in this borough agricultural land or paddock land that people want to put ponies on things like this, and we've got a load of cars on it. It's unbelievable. And then you've actually got a piece of land that is acceptable to you to do this, and possibly near it. Why have we got a load of cars on this? It's ridiculous. And I'd like to move that we go down the suggestion of what I believe says on here is his refusal. I believe that would be an enforcement action, wouldn't it?
It would, yes.
Yes, I think it's totally unacceptable. I am declaring, but we've got very little rural land in this borough, and we've got a load of cars on it. It's just totally preposterous, to be quite honest. I use language like that.
Right, Richard's going to come in before we take any more questions.
Just in terms of the enforcement action, Councillor, we recognise this as an existing business, and we recognise that this may be a problem to the business in the short term, and we would work with them in terms of trying to secure alternative arrangements through enforcement. It's just to clarify the urban boundary. The urban boundary is set in the LDP. It's a policy of the council, and there's a presumption against development outside the urban boundary. So that's the significance of the urban boundary. Within the urban boundary and within the allocations, that's where we're saying we want to see development, but outside the urban boundary, generally speaking, we're not looking for development.
Can I just say that I clarified that? I respect the fact they've got the existing businesses, and this particular business, I gather, is a fairly successful one. But at the end of the day, if you've got alternative land, it seems preposterous that you've got rural land which can be used for other things. And I've said that obviously you've got growing land and you've also got land, other activities which are in short supply in this borough. And it seems ridiculous. We've got cars on it. And I'm not, obviously, I would not want to see heavy enforcement if we can find a mutual agreement situation, which is a much better way of doing things. I take your point.
Okay, Stuart. Ronnie, did you want to?
Sorry, Chair, Councillor Bevan have already asked the same question.
Right. Richard, you wanted to come in? And then
I was just going to ask clarification about the significance of the urban boundary, and which the officer has already addressed in his answer to Councillor Ashley.
Okay, Richard. Janet?
Hello. Whilst I'm grateful that employment is coming with this company, I do share Councillor Ashley's concerns about the development and the concerns.
Any more questions? Who?
Thank you, Chair. Just to come back in, just for clarification then, if members approved this application, it would be completely contrary to the local development plan, because it falls outside of the boundaries that were stipulated in the local development plan. That's just for clarification. And just a question really, on page 85 it says the impact on economic development, the second sentence in, to allow this uncontrolled expansion on the site on the opposite side of the road both undermines the LDP process and amenity area in countryside visual amenity terms and residential amenity of the adjacent properties. So I beg your pardon, it's the next sentence I wanted clarification on. It says, if the change of use were to be granted, the local planning authority would have very little control over future intensification of the use, even with the imposition of suitably worded
conditions to restrict the nature and extent of the business operation. Are they referring there to this one specific site, or the threat to what's in the LDP generally? Because this could be seen as setting a precedent, I believe.
Claire?
Yeah, 2 points on that. In terms of the intensification, once you grant planning permission for the use of this land ancillary to the business opposite, whilst we could control it in various guises in terms of what they could store, what they couldn't, for example, intensification of an existing use doesn't require, is very rarely is that material. So it could be, whilst at the moment there's only 20 cars, it may be that they reconfigure it, for example, and put additional things in there. Once the use has been established, you're on the back foot in terms of, you're basically accepting that that is land that could be used for business purposes. In answer to your other question, I don't think it would necessarily undermine the wider economic development objectives of the plan, but certainly it could potentially affect the deliverability of the strategic allocation that has been earmarked, because that has very deliberately been allocated to allow this business to expand into a neighbouring land. And if they're not doing it and they're doing it somewhere else, it may be that doesn't come forward.
It's okay. Right, any more questions? Is anyone ready to make a proposal? Ronnie?
Yes, Chair, I'll move the recommendation of the officers for refusal.
Thank you. And it's been seconded. Right, you all ready to vote on it? We are voting to refuse this application now. You ready to vote? Right, bless your hands then. Right, me. I think that's unanimous. Right, that's the end of this planning meeting. Thank you all for your attendance. I thank the officers and thank you for coming in the gallery. I close the meeting.